Have you ever arranged photos in an album? It's a great way to make a record of your family. My name's Angie, and these are some pictures of my family. These photographs of my grandparents and great-grandparents were taken a long time ago. This one's my favorite. It's of one of my great-grandmothers, who was a school teacher. Whenever I see this picture, I wonder what her life was like. And what was it like going to school a long time ago? Let's try to find out. I wish I knew more about my great-grandmother. I asked my grandma about her, and she told me that this is the only photograph we have of her. We know she was a school teacher who taught in the Sheboygan area in the early 1900s. We might be able to learn more about my great-grandma's teaching career if we investigate schools in Wisconsin's history. But what exactly is history? I think we need to find an answer we can all agree on. How's this? History is a chronological record of real people and real events. In other words, it's a story of change over time and an explanation of why some changes took place and others didn't. History is all around us. It's everywhere. History is the story of us. You and me and everyone else. History is full of real stories, adventures, and mysteries. That's pretty exciting. Historians are the people who study those stories and try to understand what happened and why. Historians are detectives who investigate mysteries of the past. Historians make decisions about what to investigate according to what they think is important, but they don't always agree. Let's try an experiment. Do you think you would all agree on what's important? What do you think is the most important thing that happened yesterday?
I played hide and seek with my brother.
I collected crickets.
I read this magazine about where I'm from.
Yo vi las caricaturas en la televisión. I emailed my dad in Virginia.
The most important thing that happened to me yesterday was we took our dog to the vet. Probably your answer was very different. Historians make choices and investigate mysteries that are important to them. I have a mystery that's important to me. How is my great-grandmother's job different from teachers' jobs today? How have classrooms changed? How about the clothes students wear? Since I wasn't sure how to get started, I called the Sheboygan County Historical Research Center. The historian I talked to suggested we examine old photographs for clues about early schools. The Sheboygan County Historical Research Center has collected thousands of old photographs. Let's see what we can find. Curators are people who work with pieces of history like photographs. They collect, study, and preserve them. Curators wear gloves to help protect the photographs. When curators examine old photographs, they ask questions. Who could afford a camera or afford to have their picture taken? Why do people choose to pose with certain objects? I'll bet my great-grandma posed with books because she was a teacher. The curator helped me find a lot of photographs of old schools. Here's one taken inside a classroom in 1906. How does it compare with your classroom today? What's different and what's the same? Now let's look at some photographs that include people. What can you tell about these students? How about the teachers? Movies are another kind of film clue. Can you imagine how exciting it was when movies were invented? Here are some early movies from the time your great-grandparents went to school. And your grandparents and your parents. And now we have video cameras to record events. Wow! Seeing those photographs and the old movies helps me imagine what my great-grandma's school may have been like. Photographs are good clues to historical mysteries. Can you think of any other kinds of clues? Today, we can sometimes get clues about people's lives by the clothes they wear or the things they own. If someone looked in my backpack, they could probably tell what my favorite snacks are, what I like to read, and what kind of music I listen to. If someone looked in your backpack today, what could they learn about you? They could probably tell how old you are, where you go to school, and what grade you're in. They might find out what your best subject is. I'll bet we can use objects to investigate how schools have changed throughout Wisconsin's history, too. I know that historians keep historical objects at museums. Let's go investigate. The Neville Museum in Green Bay has a lot of objects. I met the museum director, Ann Koski, and she showed me a display of some of the things that came from early schools.
These are some of the different objects that we have on display about schools. So you can see a variety of different things like the school desk. On top of the desk we have a variety of different artifacts, objects that kids would have used turn of the century to about 1920, 1930 or so. You notice the little groove that's in the top of the desk right there where you can put your pencils. Then there's a space underneath to put your books and so forth.
Curators create exhibits to help museum visitors learn about stories and history. When they plan the exhibit, they choose artifacts to help tell the story. Artifacts are historic objects, such as school desks, pens, and chalk. I learned that museums don't have enough space to display all of the objects in their collections. Many are kept in special storage areas like this, where temperature, humidity, and light are controlled. Miss Koski told me there are many old schools in Wisconsin which have been saved and restored. That means they look today much like they did in the past. That sounds great. Let's visit one. This is the Smith Valley School Museum in La Crosse. This classroom has been restored to look like it did in 1925. The curators here created a living history museum where students can actually recreate some activities from the past. Lots of school groups visit the school museum every year to investigate its history. If the visiting students use their imaginations, they can really get a feel for what it was like to go to school back then by sitting in the old desks, writing with old ink pens, and studying old globes, maps, and school books. Visiting this old school has been terrific because it helped me understand a little more about my great-grandmother's life. Mrs. Radcliffe, the guide, told me what it was like to be a teacher in 1925. It was exciting to see the same kinds of lunch pails, books, and maps my great-grandma might have used. Artifacts are important clues for historians trying to solve mysteries. I thought the library would be another good place to look for more clues to our mystery. I found some good books, but they're all fairly new. Most libraries don't have really old books. The librarian told me we could find more written clues, including things written back when my great-grandma was teaching school, if we visit in archives. I made an appointment to visit the archives here at the State Historical Society of Wisconsin in Madison. Let's go find out more about their collections. I found out that an archives is a place where old maps, diaries, letters, and other paper materials are collected. My great-grandmother didn't leave any written accounts behind, but Mr. Miller, who's in charge of the archives, helped me find some materials that provided new clues about her life. I found an old teacher contract and a student grade book. I also found some written accounts, which include diaries and letters people wrote about going to school. Here's an example.
In our one-room school, we had just a wood stove for heat. Students near the stove roasted while their schoolmates sitting away from the stove didn't warm up until mid-morning.
We can learn a lot about the past by studying written records like that. But historians are careful about making decisions based on any single written account. Was the person who wrote the account exaggerating or leaving out important details? Whenever possible, historians try to find more than one written record about any one event. Think about a championship basketball game. Would someone who played in the game write about it differently than someone who watched the game? Well, we set out to investigate what schools were like in Wisconsin's past. And we found some good clues about my great-grandmother's life. By looking at photographs, we saw what old classrooms looked like. And from artifacts, we learned about old school desks, the ink pens students wrote with, and some of the tools teachers used in the classroom. And finally, by looking at written records, we know what subjects were taught and what kind of contracts teachers signed. Those things all helped me learn a lot about my great-grandmother's life. If you wanted to investigate school history, you could start in your own community. You could examine the landscape for clues. You could also talk to some of the older residents in your family or neighborhood who might be able to tell stories from their childhood. You could look at old artwork or maps. There are lots of ways to investigate history. Have you ever worked on a puzzle? When you start, you don't know how the pieces are going to fit together. As each new piece is put in place, the picture becomes more clear. Historians work that way too. They gather pieces of information and try to discover how they fit together, just like we did as we discovered each new piece of information about Wisconsin's early schools. In the next several weeks, we're going to investigate lots of mysteries about Wisconsin's past and learn more ways to investigate. We've discovered that in addition to looking for clues, history detectives like you and me need to analyze the evidence we find. That means we need to think about what the clues are telling us and decide which clues are important and believable. Historians are always looking for new ways to understand things that happened in the past, and they look for stories that haven't been told before. Historians know their job is very important. Why do you think studying history is important?
Studying history is important because kids can learn about their heritage.
You can learn about other countries and other people.
Studying history is important because kids learn what happened before.
If you study history, you can see the future.
I think history is important because it helps us understand where we fit into the story. Remember, history is a record of real people and real events. My family history is a part of Wisconsin's history. And by learning more about the stories of my ancestors, I can learn more about my story too. We're all connected. Investigating Wisconsin history is going to be an adventure. I'll see you soon.